Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for episode 95 of the show. I'm your host, Louise H. Reid. If you're listening live, welcome. I hope you're safe and well during this period of uncertainty thanks to COVID. If you're catching this on podcast, I still hope you're safe and well. Each week on this show, as you know, I invite you to sit in on a conversation with a new guest, someone who is an example of taking brave, bold action in their life in pursuit of their dreams and goals, and are here to share their journey to help you do the same as in yours. My hope is that you walk away from the show inspired and equipped to level up in your own life and leadership. So grab a pen and a coffee, sit back and enjoy. You can also go to my website, subscribe to my email list, and each week you can receive the best of the notes and quotes from each show. Finally, please remember that I love to give away exclusive Lady Boss loyalty swag as a way of saying thank you to you for spending your time with me. Simply comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty and you'll automatically be entered into the draw. Without further ado, let me welcome and introduce today's guest. Today, I have the pleasure of having Lucy Reid on the show. Lucy is so many things: a bone marrow transplant survivor, a future author, a director in a high-tech firm, a mother of two, and yes, my beloved sister, and my hero. On today's show, we're going to explore overcoming obstacles, balancing motherhood and work, and so much more. This show promises lots of laughter and perhaps a few tears, so grab your coffee and grab your tissues. With that said, Lucy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I may need tissues now just after hearing that.
I even thought that as I was writing that. I was like, is that going to make her like start the waterworks right away?
Yeah.
No, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. For so many reasons, I'm excited to have you on the show, Lucy. As you know, and as most of my listeners know, I've had mom and dad on the show on separate occasions.
Yep.
And truth be told, I learned things about them on the show that I never knew. In fact, there was something that Mum said. I'm going to share it with you right now. Mum, one of the quotes that she shared with me, or maybe it was just something she said, and I've taken as a quote, is, "Follow your heart, but don't leave your head behind." I was like, why didn't you say that to me growing up? Like, I could have done with a little more heart, because I think I was all head. Anyway, no doubt there'll be things that we uncover today that will be news to me too. So I'm really excited. And again, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm not surprised to hear that though about Mom. She probably said a lot more of those things to me than to you because I needed to hear it more than you did. So that's perhaps why.
Well, yeah, maybe. Well, and then I got to 40 and then I needed a lot of it. So I like to rewind the clock and start years ago, which, as a sidebar to my listeners, both my sister and I have the worst memory. So just, I'm giving that note out there, I'm putting that out there, if in case you hear I don't remember, and we move on to another question and conversation. But I find life journeys, Lucy, you know this to be true, I just find people fascinating. The paths that people's lives take really interesting. And I've gained more interest in that as I've gone through shit and things and joys and everything else in between in my own life. And so rewinding the clock, I'm curious to know, when you were a child, I'm thinking 8 years old, maybe just go back to when you can remember, maybe it's 18, maybe it's 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Do you remember
having, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, that, like, cue the waterworks. That is all, like, so I don't remember a lot of dreams, goals, aspirations, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but I think I have reasons for that. But one thing that I clearly remember from, you know, as young as I can remember, was wanting to be a mom and a housewife.
And a housewife.
And a housewife. That's, I blame Mom for that, but I know. Like, I'm cringing even saying it, but to be completely truthful, that to me was success.
Yeah.
was a happy family. Yeah, that's all I wanted.
You know, it's funny. I didn't know that. I recall you at a very young age. I can't recall the actual age, but from a very young age, wanting kids, and I knew that about you. But you've heard the story many times, Lucy, where I said to Mum, or I said in response, Mum was with me. Someone asked me when I was 5, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a real mum like my mum."
Aww.
And of course, the terrible memory that I have, I don't remember that, or I think it's a memory that I have, or it's been told to me so many times that I think I remember it.
Yeah.
Probably that. And so I didn't know that was yours too.
Yeah.
And I wondered if that speaks to how we grew up. Like, we had an awesome home.
We had an amazing home. And it wasn't just kids. Like, in my mind, I was a 19, like when I pictured my future, it was legitimately like a 1950s Leave It to Beaver kind of like 5 minutes into the show kind of scene. That's exactly what I pictured, was dinner on the table, the house clean, the kids home from school, like the whole shebang.
So what happened?
I know, like, I got the kids and I now have the husband, but I am not a housewife. No.
And you know what, it's without going into all the details of that, it's been a rocky road. It's been a rocky road for me to get to where I am in my life. It's been a rocky road. Call it rocky. It's been full of ups and downs, I suppose. And it's just a reminder to me, and I hope as well a reminder to listeners, how life is never what you plan.
Oh my gosh, no.
And the more I have found, I know I'm a slow learner, I suppose, the more I find that you set a goal and you work hard towards that, but have flexibility built within it. That you can listen to the doors, or you can pay attention to the doors that really are not opening for you, that you're having to kick down or get an axe for, if there's not a door for you. I finally learned that, and I'm trying to lean into that a little bit more. Okay, so little Lucy, who wanted to be a mom, you went through high school and stuff.
Yep.
Tell us what your journey into motherhood was like, because it definitely wasn't like most people's journey to motherhood.
Yes, absolutely. So it was unplanned and very scary. I was 21. I had finished my first year of college and realized even before the first year, probably the first week, this isn't for me. But our parents are highly educated. That wasn't it wasn't an option for me to not continue post-secondary, but I just knew, okay, this wasn't it. Program, whatever it wasn't it. So I took the next year to figure out what I wanted to do. And then the decision was ultimately taken away from me. As soon as I got pregnant, got sick with bone marrow disease. And so the same blood test to confirm the pregnancy at 6-7 weeks pregnant also discovered that I was critically ill. So I spent the pregnancy and many years after fighting that.
Yeah, so quite the way to find out that you're expecting a baby, which was unplanned but wanted, very much wanted, and I know that to be true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be putting that in there. But just to be clear, because I also, as an aside, I don't understand what the deal is with people like it being a secret that a pregnancy was unplanned.
I actually didn't know. This sounds really, really, really stupid. I didn't know that people planned for pregnancies. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought people just there's obviously some better times than others, but
right.
And that just goes to show that I'm not a planner, which is funny because my career has been based on planning. But anyway, as an aside, in my personal life, planning out the window.
And so, is it fair to say that how motherhood came to you, like, has it changed since then, or has it continued to be unexpected and uncertain?
That's a great question. I think life is unexpected and uncertain, and so motherhood is no different.
Mm.
I really think that if people, I know people, plan to varying degrees, right? Some people, that's their jam. They feel more comfortable knowing, their life plan. But like, as you said, you have to build into their flexibility. And I think it's an anomaly if people build out a plan and they live to the plan. It just,
I want to just interject here, because I think there are people who do that, because I did that for the most part, with a few exceptions.
yeah.
That was until 40. And so I think that I just want to add to what you said, that I think it's few and far between people who plan the life, create the life, live the life, and love the life.
I think, and I could be completely wrong, but I think that you're missing so many important lessons along the way then. Because you can't plan and account for an illness that you don't have yet. That is just part of life. Accidents, deaths, job loss, pandemics.
Right.
So I felt very, very fortunate. So that's one of the feelings that is just pronounced when I look back, and I think, nobody can go back in time. But if we had that option, I would not change. I wouldn't even consider changing my illness and obviously my pregnancy. I reaped so many benefits and rewards from that time that I felt lucky. I felt the lucky one, that I got to see a side to humanity that I wouldn't have seen inside the walls of my college, or if I went to wherever I went after that first year. I got such a rich experience. So I see it as just good fortune.
Can you help me get there? Because I've yet to realize a good thing that came from that, although it's extremely inspiring considering, the side of the bed that you were on versus the side of the bed that I was on. I know there'll be many things, Lucy, some of which are probably hard to put to words and too many to mention, but what are the things that come to mind that you learned the most through, well, maybe before I ask the question, tell the listeners a little bit, because it was long, a little bit about the journey of your illness, because it wasn't just this is your illness, there's a year of treatment, there's a transplant, and then you're better. Like, it was really, really drawn out and long, and there are lots of people involved, doctors, our parents, our family. Yeah, like, just recognizing this show is only an hour.
You know me too well. I will take the whole hour. Yeah, well, so I was, like I said, I was diagnosed with what they initially thought was, they being the doctors, leukemia. So that first blood test, they called me back in and said something is very wrong. They sent me to an emergency appointment. I needed a blood transfusion, which then became a weekly routine. And then, so the first few tests I had were bone marrow biopsies and aspirations. I ended up having 4 of them before they could even diagnose my illness at the hospital I was at, because it was very rare. And so I had severe aplastic anemia, which is essentially failure of the bone marrow. So when they looked at the samples under the microscope, there weren't enough cells everywhere. And so they thought it was a bad sample. Turns out that is true to the disease, in that you're not going to see a lot. So it took a little bit to diagnose. And in the meantime, I was getting blood transfusions and growing a baby. At about 20 weeks pregnant, I was still getting blood transfusions that weren't even taking me week to week. And at that point, my oncologist said to me, I really think it's time for you. This is the last week you can, and I really think you need to have an abortion. And he had been saying that to me every week. And I said, no. I want to make it perfectly clear. I am completely pro-choice. You need to do what you need to do for you. I just knew with everything in me that that wasn't the right decision. And he said, I think you're going to die. He said, you're not in the most demanding trimester of your pregnancy, and you're not even lasting week to week. Long story short, I successfully carried the baby to 36 weeks. Like I said, blood transfusions and some immunosuppressant therapy to try to kickstart things. And I delivered the baby. And I was supposed to have my bone marrow transplant 2 weeks after delivery, which was very, very difficult to come to terms with. A 21-year-old single mom. Luckily, I had, you and an amazing support system with mom and dad and the rest of the family. But, I already loved this baby. Anyway, turns out they wanted to try some drug therapy, which was extremely aggressive, very, very toxic. And I ended up being on it for 3.5 years with relapses in between and the works. But essentially at the 3.5-year mark, I don't know if you know this or not, I had always been okay with the situation, as hard as it was. Disease and hardships are part of life. And so I was no different than anybody else, a 60-year-old that just had a heart attack, a 22-year-old that had a stroke. Like, why wouldn't I have it? But at the 3.5-year mark, I mentally and physically was done. It was like a light switch. And I said, I'm done. I can't fight anymore. And at the very same time, the drug therapy stopped working. That was it. And I was transfusion dependent again. And so at that point, as you know, the only option was a bone marrow transplant. And so March 17th, 2005, I had my transplant. So successful, thanks to you, my donor, the perfect match. And then I had a really, really great recovery. It's funny because I was sick for 3.5 years before my transplant. Or close to 4 years, I guess. It was 3.5 when the drug therapy stopped working. And then, it was about 4 years. In my head, I saw the transplant as the end. That was the end of the road. And so like I had just explained all the way leading up to it, I felt, like, okay, I can do this. We can do this. We can do this. It's hard. It's a fight, but we can do this. I hadn't mentally prepared for life after the transplant.
Right.
And so although it was a successful recovery, I had always thought it was just, that was it. I have my transplant and just kind of miraculously, I can have a normal life back. And it took quite a bit of time. But still I was raring to go. I think I was working July 2006.
Yeah,
so I started full time, July 2006.
So, I get chills when I hear the story. Not that I hear it all that much, of course. And interestingly, not to you, but interestingly to the listeners, Lucy was on the Canadian version of Baby Stories, which was it was really cool. I think it was really cool.
It was super cool.
And so you have video of Ethan being born because the video crew was allowed to go into the operating room. And so many parts of this journey were scary, of course, differently for Lucy than it would be for me and my mom. But certainly when you went into the operating room, that was not what we wanted to have happen because of the disease you had. And so that was like saying goodbye. And so many things to be grateful for. That's for sure. So the question that I was going to ask before I said, what's the story, is what's the most significant learning that you walked away with the biggest lesson that you learned from this experience?
I think I think that grows. I don't think that it is, I'm sorry, it's maybe not the best answer for you, but I don't think it's one lesson, and I don't think you just learn it one day. It grows, and it marinates, and it takes different shapes and forms as time goes on, and you reflect. And the one thought that is just so deep, and was then and still is now, is gratitude. I had so much gratitude all throughout the disease, regardless if it was a blood transfusion day, if it was, an appointment where, we heard some horrible news. I felt grateful, because in that moment of whatever it is, I had my mom, I had you, I had dad, I had our brothers. We had each other, we had strength. There was so much to be grateful for, and that's just what I clung to. And I couldn't bear to sit in sadness, because there's sadness everywhere. You're never going to be out of a situation where there isn't some sadness somewhere. You could be 40 and your life is quote unquote perfect, but you could still be sad for something that happened in your teens. There's always going to be sadness, and I just couldn't sit in it. So I organically clung to gratitude.
And as your sister, who granted was not there in person with you side by side, whereas Mum was, I can echo that, or I can state the truth behind that. And I was surprised. I don't know if I've ever told you that, how surprised I was with your reaction.
No.
I don't think you can, I don't think, you can't ever know how you, yourself, or someone else is going to react in a crisis.
That's right.
We can just even look around the world right now. There are some people who have amazed us, I believe, and some who have, just continued to disappoint us, and
that's
those
right.
Individuals remain nameless. But the reality is, I don't think we don't really ever know. And you amazed me through that experience. I was humbled, and I was grateful to have you just being such a rock. It was incredible. And talk about growing up overnight. That's what I felt like. That's my memory of you, a side of you coming out, because it clearly was already in you, but a side as your older sister,
right,
that I had never seen before. Maybe others had in the context of their relationships, but I hadn't seen that in you before, even remotely. And so it was incredible.
Oh, thank you.
But it also, in your description, which you've just been so articulate in sharing it, it reminds me of the duality of emotion in every situation. And then therein lies choice and free will. And I think, right? And I think,
gosh, yes. Yes.
And some situations, I feel like, based on your description, the way you told the story and the way I saw it, I feel like it was less it wasn't quite a conscious choice. It maybe on some level it was, but it just really was more of who you were, and it just kind of oozed out. But there are times where the choice has to be much more conscious. That, am I going to choose the sadness and happiness in this situation? Am I going to choose to wallow in the sadness, because the sadness is true, but also the happiness is also true? Which am I choosing? Which am I going to feed?
Absolutely. And you are right in that. I do think that it's just it's my personality. I do gravitate towards positive as opposed to negative, but that's not to say that, like you said, that there aren't some days where it's a choice. And I felt fortunate that just, organically I was more of a positive person, but not to say that I didn't have to exercise, that reminder to myself to be positive, for sure.
I was wondering what was going to come after you said the word exercise, because
no,
it wasn't exercise in the physical way.
Oh, no.
I was waiting.
Hell no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Mental exercises, which I still think are a thing, by the way. I do. But anyway.
I do know that it helps with certain things. Like you can play better golf. I remember reading about, I think I either had a dream about this or it's a true story, that there was someone in jail who mentally practiced his golf game every single day. And when he came out of jail, he was still the same. We're not talking about professional golf player. But
Yeah.
He hadn't lost any of his ability. He still was golfing the same.
Well, maybe some of your viewers will know maybe there's some researchers out there that can validate this theory that I do. We used to laugh about it all the time, but I would say that I would go to bed and do mental exercises, and not mental as in breathing techniques. And what am I grateful for? No, like actual physical, I'm doing squats, I'm lifting weights, like I would do it in my mind. I still think there's something to it, but
yeah, well, I know we have a few PhDs and people who are really into neuroscience who might be able to validate or squash what it is that you're saying. So I welcome those comments at this point.
Just be kind.
No, then if it's the person I'm thinking of, she was very kind. So considering you went through this really, really scary ordeal, is that the scariest thing that you've ever done, or is there something scarier that you have been through in your life? Like, what's the scariest thing that you've experienced or ever done?
Oh my gosh. So that's a really interesting question, and I don't think I've ever thought of it. So I can tell you what scares me on a daily basis, but I'll have to think of the scariest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
What scares me on a regular basis is misunderstandings, or our misunderstandings.
Tell me more.
Relationships are super important to me, and as they are to a lot of people. But, I put the heaviest weighting on relationships with my kids, relationships with my family, a worker, you name it, a multifaceted, but relationships. And one of the most critical things to the success or failure of relationships is communication. But how I say something and how you hear it are two different things. And, communication styles vary. And as a result of that, misunderstandings can happen. And I think this is why, and you'll know exactly what I'm about to, when I say it, what I mean. I am long-winded in explanation, not because I want to hear myself talk, but because it's so important for me for you to understand what I'm meaning and what I'm saying, so that at the end of a happy time, an argument, whatever it is, we walk away with the same understanding. And so it just kills me. Misunderstandings, they weigh heavy on me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're long-winded. I didn't know that.
I am so glad my husband is not in this room right now.
The kids might say something otherwise, maybe, but in the context of our relationship, I don't think.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I'm glad to hear that. Because I guess, I'm not quite as extreme as Mom, but I would say I'm along those lines. But yeah, so I say that's my daily thing that I'm scared of.
I like that though. I think that's a much better question that you asked yourself and then answered than the one I gave, because that one I think is a really neat one that you can do something about every single day. Right? You can be intentional every single day, because it's that important to you.
Absolutely.
There was a time when you helped me. I don't know the situation. I just remember you helping me. You were on a phone call with me and I was freaking out about something. And you told me to close my eyes, put my feet on the ground, and you got me really grounded. You said, imagine your feet are solid in the earth and you can feel the roots beneath you. And that continues to be something that I go to when I need to get grounded, which is often. I think it's easy to get off the rails, like, and not in an extreme, you're going to lose it kind of way.
Yeah.
Because those things happen slowly, and I can really lose it. And so I'm a work in progress too. And
I
so,
will not say that about you, but.
No, but it happens. And when it does happen, it's rare, but when it happens, it's not pretty.
Right.
So that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's an accumulation of not being grounded, right? So, well, and other things too, but to put it simply, all this to say, speaking of being long-winded, do you have a certain image or a mantra that's kind of a go-to that keeps you grounded?
Yeah, so I do have an image. And I really developed it when I was preparing for transplant. I can't really consciously think of anything before that, but this was pivotal, and just it is such a loud screaming image in my head. And I the regimen to prepare for transplant is quite extreme. I had chemotherapy beforehand. I actually went into the hospital with less than 20% cell saturation to begin with, but essentially, for me to accept your bone marrow, our bodies would reject it. So in order to stop our natural fight to reject this foreign object, they need to completely disable your immune system and essentially clear out, your bones. So that's in my case. And so as a result of the chemotherapy, I knew I would feel really, really, really unwell. And I was very unwell going into hospital. I actually was admitted right into isolation. I was that sick. So I knew I would be extremely tested and would need some grounding, and something that I would be able to, it could draw me like that when I needed it. And so I kind of sat with it for a little while, and I thought, what is going to pull me back if I feel so horrible? And, unfortunately, 15 years ago, transplants aren't what they are now. And, quite a few people would die. And so I thought, if I come to those crossroads in that hospital bed, what's going to pull me back? And so at the time, I have 2 kids now, but at the time I had just my son. And the image that formulated over time was, kind of just us in the clouds, overlooking some willow trees. Funny enough, I think I've told you this, at Julie Odell's house.
Wow.
That's the backdrop that's underneath us. And it's just me with my arm around my son. And that was it. And so over time, it just became so ingrained and so powerful. It was almost like, if you need, those shows where they put the defibrillators on to get someone going again, it was that strong for me. And so that's an image that for me is grounding. I have since now added my daughter into the mental picture. And so it's the 3 of us.
Where's husband? Where's husband, Gary? Sorry, Gary.
I've also added my husband.
Well, of course. Yeah, that one was just assumed. Yeah, that was just. So yeah. I can't emphasize to listeners perhaps who don't have a mental image, or whether some people are more moved and grounded by spoken word that they can repeat in their mind, of having a motto or a mantra or a visualization or some sort of image to keep you grounded is so meaningful during times like now, and during COVID, during illness that you don't expect, during a phone call that you get, a personal tragedy, will strike at some point, or a really tough conversation at work. you know, you're in that meeting room and you can go there and use that right away as a strategy to cope.
Yeah. And one thing I would suggest, and I want to preface this by, I'm not a therapist. I am really nobody except someone who I feel is very rich with experience. You can't force it.
Yeah.
You've got to be self-aware, and you've got to sit with it, and you have to pick up on cues. What resonates with you? What gets you going? What makes you want to fight? You know, so you have to be self-aware, and you have to know what's your currency, what works. For me, it was no question. It was no question going to that transplant. It was my son. My son, I would fight for my son. And so I knew he was going to be that for me. And that, you know, that may not be it for the next person. Like, so what is it for you? And then also, you know, that still has been my paramount, but I have actually developed other ones more relevant to what I'm going through. Right. You know, last year, for example, it was one word, thanks to you, who got me, you know, you challenged me and got me really thinking about it. And what's the word? It's living. You know, so that I would say that it is, like you said, it's so incredibly important. If you feel yourself kind of drifting, and, you know, that grounding is so critical. But it's something that, you know, be kind to yourself and really think about what resonates within you, because otherwise it's just a false sense of security. You know, you may be trying to do these grounding exercises and thinking, this is stupid, this doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. Chances are you've picked the wrong thing, and, you know, keep going.
I love that. That's so true. It's a layer. There's layers to it. And so maybe if it feels like I kind of think this is right, but it doesn't really feel right and think right, because usually it's a feeling thing. It's not so much a thinking thing.
Absolutely,
like,
it's a feeling thing.
I wanted my word of the year this year to be a certain word, and I was like, yeah, this is it. But it didn't feel right. I kept trying to trick myself. It doesn't work.
Say it in an accent. Say it in Italy.
Right?
Try a French accent.
It doesn't work. And so this is where I love what you were saying about the self-awareness. I also love how you were talking about its evolution. You know, as we grow and change and have different experiences, so too does what. So too the grounding thing, whether mantra or visualization or whatever, so too that evolves. Yeah. I've mentioned a few times on the show before, Lucy, and I'm not sure if you've read her book, Michelle Obama's book, Becoming.
I have not.
Okay, I think I lent it to someone. If I lent it to you and you're listening, can you please return it? Shoot. It's either I've lent it out or it's upstairs. It's in one of those two places. I should let you borrow it if I have it or if I get it back. There's so many magnificent things that Michelle Obama said in the book. The biggest takeaway, which I know I've repeated numerous times on the show, is we are all in the process of becoming.
Yes.
I read that. Isn't that powerful?
That is amazing.
It's like you're not trying to get to somewhere and then you're like, hello, I've arrived.
Yes.
Because I think we've all had that feeling of you get the thing, you do the thing, you write the book. Like I just did my first book draft, as you know, and don't get me, I know, thank you. And it was a really, really awesome feeling. But I think at times in the past, I certainly have been guilty of this, put so much into this it's going to be so awesome. And you get there and it's good. But the expectations are so great because you've not arrived. It's just part of the process of becoming. Yeah. Oh, I just thought that was so insightful.
Yeah, that is extremely powerful. That's something that you can just sit and think about. Like that right? That is like an everyday thing. That's amazing. Okay, again, so I'm going to order the book. I'm going to order the book.
Okay.
Today. I will order the book.
So order the book, to be honest, not trying to downplay the value of a book, because I do love books and I'm writing a book and I want everyone to buy the book when it comes out. Okay, I gotta put a little plug in there. But Oprah interviewed Michelle Obama shortly after her book came out. I don't know if it's still on YouTube because I tried to find it, I'd say about a month ago, to send to someone, and I couldn't find it easily. I didn't search that hard, granted, so I clearly didn't want to send it to this person that much. And that I enjoyed a little bit more than the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, because Oprah and Michelle Obama, I mean, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very skilled interviewer. Oprah is, as all who love her know,
Yeah.
and the dynamic between the two of them, and it was just about the book. And so hearing Michelle's book come to life through her words was just magic.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading the book in a white English voice, right? Like,
true.
Privileged, and she comes from a poor area in Chicago.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't have the same kind of emotional content to it, right? As opposed to when she shares it.
Do you think you would have enjoyed the interview as much if you hadn't have read the book first?
I watched the interview first.
Oh, okay.
So perhaps that's why. I thought that it might have been like the movie, that I always enjoyed the books more than the movie.
Yeah.
But this interview was better. Again, my opinion. Anyway, all that to say, buy the book and watch the YouTube.
Done.
Okay.
And done.
Okay. Earlier in the show, you mentioned something that you said, I'm sure we'll get into this, and I don't think that we have, so I want to get into it, that you didn't have goals and aspirations as a young child.
Mm-hmm.
That's news to me too. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's something that I haven't developed much as an adult either, and it's, it is, I would say, a weakness of mine, because I'm not proactive enough in going for what I want in a structured way. And when I look back, and I think, I really think it's because, so I was diagnosed officially at 21. That was clear. But I was sick since I was in grade 4 and didn't know it. I had, it was May of, I don't know what year, I can't do math that quickly anymore. But I was in grade 4, and I developed a parasite, and I was very, very, very ill. I got sick in the May, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to go back to school in September. I managed to go back to school, but at that time, the doctors thought I had leukemia then, and turns out I didn't. But I never really woke up from that one day and was just well. It was this gradual return to, okay, I don't think I feel as sick as yesterday. And then it kind of just became a normal. So I had tons of cankers in my mouth, like enormous ones, my whole mouth. I was very, very tired. I used to skip school not to go be with my friends, although I did plenty of that as well, but I would skip school to go sleep. I would be late for school because I was so exhausted. I could not get out of bed. And so I think I didn't have, a traditional, well, who does, but, my high school years were great. I don't want to try to say, woe was me, but I think I had other focus, and just, I went to college, like I said, it wasn't right for me. And then sort of everything was, took its own path. But, I wasn't ever a healthy adult. I was 20, after the recovery, I was about 28 years old. And so at that point, then you think, okay, let's roll up my sleeves, let's get goal setting and planning. But when I looked back, had I had planned when I was 18, 19, 20, it would have gone to hell anyway, with my illness. And so it became less important for me. For me, the goal, and perhaps I've never really thought of it like this, but, my goals were, how am I going to establish a good life for me and my son? How am I going to maintain my health? And so maybe it's just that I considered goal setting in the traditional sense of, house, car, husband, kids, education, so maybe I had formalized what a goal is too much, and I actually maybe have been doing it in just an untraditional way.
Right.
But yeah, it's.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's really, why are you sorry? I recall you being unwell. I recall that mom and dad had gone through all of their vacation and us kids were taking time off school to be with you at home. I didn't realize as a kid myself who all kids are self-centered.
Yeah, as you should be.
And our parents wanting to obviously keep us somewhat sheltered from what was happening when there was nothing known.
Yeah.
I guess I feel kind of bad that I didn't even know all of that.
That makes me happy that you didn't.
That makes me feel like crap, but I'm glad that makes you happy.
Makes me happy. That would have been the worst thing, is you being focused on that when you should have been focused on being a kid.
Yeah.
So that makes me happy.
But then maybe I would have been a little bit nicer.
No.
But that's a whole other show.
You have made up for it tenfold. It's all good. Yeah, you didn't know that. Wow, okay.
No, again, I knew that it had gone on a long time. I knew that it wasn't just one day you woke up well, but I didn't know that there was, oh my gosh, could this be leukemia? I didn't, again, know that it continued to stay with you and have such a pervasive impact on your, like, taking time off school to sleep. And I just didn't.
Yeah. And that's actually, so the cause, so when I was diagnosed at 21, the cause is idiopathic, meaning cause is unknown. But there is a correlation between the manifestation of certain parasites into bone marrow disease, aplastic anemia. And I did have parvovirus. Parvovirus is one of the known causes.
I thought dogs got parvovirus.
Yep. And then so yes, that's what I had in grade 4. So it's likely that it developed at that point.
Right. That it turned that on in you, and
and then just was exacerbated by the pregnancy, which a lot of diseases are.
Right. Yeah. And interestingly, to bring Lola into the mix, when you got pregnant with Lola, which you, by all medical explanations, should not have gotten pregnant.
That's right.
Because of the chemo that you went through.
Yeah.
She did what? So tell us what that pregnancy then did to your recovery.
Oh, it gives me goosebumps. I feel so blessed. I feel so blessed because I feel like my life is so symbolic, like to me personally, not to the world. I mean, to me personally. And I have so many cyclical reminders of it. It's actually very bizarre. And so, I got pregnant with Ethan. Then my disease blew up. I had the transplant. I recovered, and had a very, very successful recovery. But as you said, part of the regimen is chemotherapy, and the chemotherapy, the one that I had in particular, is hard on the reproductive organs. So I was told going into transplant that I would have no more kids. And I was still a single mom at the time, not in a relationship. So there was no opportunity to, freeze embryos, or, so sorry if I've just buggered that term, but whatever you do with the embryos, that wasn't applicable. And although I had 3.5 years to gear up to the transplant, when it happened pretty suddenly. It was rare that all of a sudden the drugs that had been working for 3.5 years would stop. And so by the time we needed to go into transplant, it was too late to freeze any eggs. So when I found out I wouldn't be able to have kids, I was devastated. I think that was the only time I had cried in the hospital. I was devastated because, as you all heard, being a mom was the most important thing And so I fast forward 18 months maybe after my transplant, surprise Lola. So I had my checkup with my transplant doctor. I was 4 months pregnant. I was showing at the time, and I walked in, and my transplant doctor, who he and I developed a very close relationship with at this point, was like, what the heck? How did you do that? And he said, Lucy, if you walk in with prostate cancer, it won't surprise me. Like, he legitimately said that. He said, you can do anything. So anyway, one thing that was
Dr. Lippman, we've got to give a shout out to Dr. Lippman.
Oh,
yeah. Shout out to Dr. Lippman. He deserves to have that. Yeah.
But up until I got pregnant with Lola, although, like I said, the recovery was very successful, I still was low grade fatigued. I hadn't bounced back to, what I would have considered was normal energy. Although I never have had, looking back historically, I've never had, normal energy levels, but it still was off from what I thought it would be until I got pregnant with Lola. Bang. And then it put me right into,
right where you need to be.
Yeah.
I love that. I wanted to share that for two reasons. One is just because you commented on pregnancy doing things to our bodies, which it does all sorts of things. And so it also did the opposite, while it it exacerbated aplastic anemia in the first place. And then it's almost like it was bookended by another child that brought you back to full wellness. It's like really quite.
It is next level shit.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, I don't know how else to really put that. One of the things that I wanted to explore with you, and we're really getting close to the top of the hour, but I wanted to maybe just start to talk about with you is motherhood and work. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart as I've tried to balance it, and then, came to the realization that there's no balancing it. And once I accepted that, there's a relief that came with that, because there's no balance. It's sort of a blend and an integration somehow. Talk to me a little bit about your approach to balancing and blending, whatever the hell term you want to use, as you've gone through being a mom in a whole bunch of different sort of situations and circumstances. Sometimes they'll have to, your mom living with your own mom and dad due to your illness, and then being on your own for a short while until you've since then met your husband, and there's a blending. Like, we could have had the whole fucking show on this topic. So
I know, take breath. Yeah.
So now that I've just kind of like dumped that bomb on you and said, we're coming to the top of the hour, just what are your thoughts on something that would be like, what's your approach to that? What do you want to share with other working moms who are listening right now?
Well, one, like, I just hug you all. That's it. I mean, we are genuinely in this together. And, we do the best that we can do. One thing though, that really helped me as I went back to work with my daughter. So, I didn't work until my son was 6 because I was off. I was working, but on fighting this disease. And so I actually started my career when my daughter was 1. And so that was a whole new challenge. I had 2 kids. My daughter, who was just a lovely, lovely baby, and became anything but that when I went back to work. Like, let's be honest, bless her. Some kids adapt really well, some don't, and she didn't. And so one thing I would tell myself, or ask myself every day is, do these 5 minutes matter? And do these 5 minutes matter either way? Do these 5 minutes matter? Do they matter more to my daughter, or do they matter more to me arriving at my desk at 8:30 or 8:35? Because, that's what we do. We got to get out the door. Oh my gosh, we got to get to daycare. I've got to get to my desk. I've got to get to that meeting. All of these things are very important, but we are one person doing the best we can in motherhood and the best we can as an employee. And sometimes the 5 minutes matter more, with your child. They're having a tantrum and they won't put their winter boots on. or their socks on, or both? You know, where do the 5 minutes matter most?
I think that's really good. You're really good at bringing it like really tactical and making it really relatable. I think that everyone can relate to that. And I think that, you know, it's really relevant now, and expectations need to change right now as we are in this period of remote working. If we are fortunate enough that our employers and our job enables that to happen, right? And then schooling. I have to admit, I was on a Facebook Live. I think may have told you about this. I was at a Facebook Live with our local city councillor along with a couple of other professional women.
Okay.
And one of the questions that came up was, you know, how's the school thing going now that we have curriculum? And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea how the school thing is going. I think it's going well. I mean, they're on a shared computer. We have one computer between four. I have a job that it's, while the organizations have been extremely supportive. So some of this is certainly choice. It's like, I've got 4 kids. They've all got, I don't know how many teachers. I don't even know the names of all the teachers. I'm getting 1 million emails from every single teacher. Teachers, shout out to all of you. Bless your hearts. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm not reading your emails.
Yeah.
I have 1 million already coming in. And so I feel like what you're sharing right now is so relevant and timeless, actually.
I just want to say that, okay, so in my head, it's so what? They didn't do their work this week. So what? Like, challenge it a little bit. So what? So they're going to get behind. So what? That it's going to take them longer to get caught up. So what? You know, chase it all the way down. You guys, they will get caught up. They're not going to be stuck in grade 7 forever. You know, it is such a challenging time. Be good to yourself, be good to your kids, you know, or don't be so hard on yourself. And as a result, that means being good to yourself and being good to your kids. You know, I just feel like there's just so much more than that typical plan. So what?
That's where the magic happens. That's where the living happens, isn't it? Like outside of the typical plan.
Yep.
That's where.
Absolutely.
I'm really sad that I've got only one final question for you. This has been really, like, okay, has this been fun?
It's been so fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes, thank you for saying yes. And I really appreciate this. And I now know how to learn more about you, is I just have to have you on my show. Like, this is how we can really, like, I can really dig in. I have a bunch of rapid fire questions. I don't have time to ask them. So I'm going to just choose one. And that is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Eat the damn cake.
I love it.
Eat the damn cake.
Okay, and because you answered that one so quickly, I am going to ask you one more. And that is, what does the world need more of?
Understanding.
And that takes us right back to one of the first questions that you asked yourself and then answered. Because I was going to say a question that I asked, but you actually rephrased it, and it was a much better question. And I love that. And I can't thank you enough once again, and to share with my listeners, like, how much my sister means to me. I know I've said this a couple of times on a few episodes, and I did not set this up just for this particular show. There's 2 things I want to show you. And those who are watching on YouTube can see it. Those who are listening, I'll just explain it. One that sits on my desk. This is a photo of my sister and I in, obviously in a frame. And then the other thing that sits just out of reach, which I won't get up and grab, but is in my view. And that is in a frame. It says, "Find your happy." And when I moved into my own place after having left my marriage relationship of 25 years, my sister came from out of town to help me move, and she gave me a little bag with a little gift inside it. And she said, the gift actually is kind of nothing. I just needed to get you the bag because it was so appropriate. I said, find your happy, and there was a little lip gloss in it, which was a really nice color. But the find your happy is in a frame and reminds me of what I didn't do for so long, why I do what I do, and just, I just wanted to share that with you. That's my sister, and she is my heart. And thank you for sharing your wonderfulness with me and with my listeners today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And also to all of you, thank you to you for listening and showing up each and every week as you do. And I'll remind you that information about my radio show and all my guests can be found at louisehreid.com. Also, a big shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. And as always, my love, Jay Andrews. If you've been inspired by today's guest and are ready to level up in your own life, please contact me. Let me see how I can help, and let's get growing. Until next Tuesday at 11 a.m., I'm Louise H. Reid, wishing all of you a bold and courageous day. And in the words of my sister, Lucy Reid, eat the damn cake. Bye, my friends.